Hello, and welcome to my commentary to the group by Laura, Emily, Ubaldo, and Jesse. And thank you for a really well-run and comprehensive session. I enjoyed your discussion as much as the previous one, and I like the way you sort of followed the questions in order and had the discussion sort of be iterative among all the group members. And so starting with the first issue, which was the relationship between the intelligence analyst and the policymaker, I think that Jesse started talking about the fact that there is this inherent conflict between the agenda of the policymaker and the intelligence analyst by design. It's not supposed to influence that agenda, but to provide facts or, the analytical product, and then hope or be in a position of trust to where that influence is not necessarily a coercive influence, but it is dictated by credibility as a subject matter expert versus a policymaker that more often than not does not have the intelligence background, that they will heed and pull out the relevant information to drive their policy. And certainly the stumbling blocks are that what is being looked at or sought stems from the requirements, right? When you look at the intelligence cycle, it is a policymaker that sets the requirements for the collection and the analysis. So inherently there, right from the very beginning, from the requirements, there's going to be a reflection of the overall direction of a particular administration to what they want to know. And ideally, if you look at this intelligence cycle, you would like that to start not with the requirements, but maybe with a feedback to the policymaker on what the priorities should be. And as we know, the process is rather linear, and feedback is very often this orphan and forgotten step of the intelligence cycle. So the requirements sort of start the process instead of, sort of being grounded in a more longitudinal sense. So as the policymakers change and their time in office is limited, there certainly might be a disconnect there. Whereas the intelligence analyst would have more of a longevity in a particular entity, analytical entity, or part of the intelligence community. And so they are a little bit more grounded in a specific area of interest to them. And that's, certainly something that has been an issue. And it goes to that, dotted line that the intelligence analyst really is at the service of a policymaker. And I think Jesse referred to what Loventhal discussed as policymakers being consumers of intelligence. And in a consumer sense, obviously, it's almost like the market of ideas where they pick and choose of what fits the formulation of their particular strategy. And I think Laura had some interesting observations on that as well, that even though we might argue, like Jesse did, that maybe it shouldn't be a consumer and provider relationship, more of a partner relationship. But when you start talking about partnerships, then you do encourage or open a door for the influence of the intelligence analyst, something that, in a pure intelligence theory, Sherman Kent was not considering as advisable. And it was ultimately that boundary was such that the policymaker does dictate the requirements down, but what comes from the down and what's applied to act, it's, within the ethical and accountability sphere of the decision maker. So I think you had a really good discussion here on this intelligence analysis happens more at a tactical level, where policymakers operate in a more strategic environment where competing policies or competing agendas have to be prioritized. And they certainly have to be advised about their options, and they certainly have to be advised about the depth of the intelligence product that's provided. But they are yet at the same time not encouraged to influence policy other than make policy recommendations. And, that's a very difficult line to walk, particularly for those experienced subject matter experts that, again, might feel that if they have supplied certain intelligence and wasn't acted upon, it's very demoralizing for that community, or that they are blamed for intelligence processes blamed, whereas it's really not the fault of the intelligence analyst, but the policymaker that this particular information wasn't heeded. And certainly you discussed the warning signs and all the bits and pieces of intelligence prior to 9/11. They were all there, and they were being supplied by the intelligence community. Now the decisions to act didn't necessarily follow. So, it's an open question again of, how is that concept of that boundary, a dotted line between the analysis and a policymaker, is it workable? And I think, again, going back to trust and relationship, it will certainly be reflected in the actions by the policymaker. How much trust that policymaker has in a specific entity that supplies that intelligence. And of course, the history and personal relationships have a big role in that. So obviously, Laura mentioned something about, also a tunnel vision of some intelligence analysts who might be so invested in particular issues that they consider most important, whereas for the overall strategic vision, they might not be that important to the decision maker at the time. And they have to prioritize those, and sometimes some of those there is not an alignment of those interests. So I thought you had a really good discussion on that. Ubaldo started talking about the Benghazi. I think you opened the discussion on the Benghazi and how particular agendas were in play, political agendas in that situation.